go ahead and introduce you guys to our final speaker. Cheryl Scanlan is a former executive with a multi-million-dollar firm in New York and combines strong business acumen with a passion for seeing Christian business professionals thrive. For more than a decade, she has worked with hundreds of professionals in order to achieve their aggressive goals in a small business, a nonprofit, and corporate environments. Cheryl has developed two curricula. One is a long-standing ICF-approved coach training program that has deeply impacted the students called ACT. The other is a personal development curriculum, Promised Land Living, which was launched in 2005. Cheryl is the Dean of Faculty with the Professional Christian Coach Institute. She is a coach, a speaker, a leadership developer, and trainer, and has formerly served as women's minister and care director at her church of 5,000 members called Crossroads Fellowship. With that, Cheryl, we thank you and we welcome you.
Thank you, Jenny. I am so happy to be with you all tonight. And Jenny is going to help me to get a sense of where you're at with contracting. So I'm going to begin with talking a little bit about what we're going to accomplish tonight, I hope. And then we're going to be taking several polls to get a sense of what's happening in your world. So welcome. Thank you for joining me tonight. And for those of you who will be listening to the recording, I do hope that tonight is valuable to you. So we have several learning objectives tonight. In the next hour, I'm hoping to provide you with an approach to contracting that's going to increase several things for you as coaches, but primarily your conversion rates for both individual and corporate agreements. And how are we going to do that? We're going to look at, you've all heard of the phrase know, like, and trust. Well, I'm going to put a little spin on that and help you to think of know, like, and trust from a different angle in the context of contracting. And then I'm hoping to share with you from my School of Hard Knocks some of those unnecessary and easily fixed errors in basic contracting. And I'm hoping during that time that you will post for Jenny the questions that you're having, because I'm going to try to allow at least 15, if not 20, 25 minutes for us to ask questions. I was just on the phone not too long ago with a coach who was asking someone in the industry about some contracting questions and wasn't able to get to anything specific. And so I know sometimes, you go to events like this and you get this high level stuff, but you don't get into the details of what you exactly need for you to feel more confident in your environment to move forward. So we're going to hopefully leave a fair amount of time near the end of this to talk about your questions. So please be thinking about those and post those for Jenny to moderate for you. And then finally, I'm hoping that we can create a path for the potential client that keeps them in charge. High level, and I just shared at ICF Raleigh area chapter on increasing our value proposition. And how do we do that? And the reality is, over the course of a contracting process, and then in the course of any individual call that you have with your client, the more decisions that your client is making and they're in charge of making, the more positive and favorable the outcomes typically. The more decisions that we're making for the client, the less favorable and positive the outcomes, because we're not empowering the client. Well, how does that fit when it comes to contracting, where you have certain parameters that you need to work with and they have certain parameters that they need to work with, and how do you get those two to work together? So we'll be talking about that tonight. So that's our plan. So Jenny, I think what I'd like to do is bring up that first field poll for them now, and let's get some information from them about their conversion rates. So you should see up on your screen now a field poll, and if you would just take a moment to mark which one of those percentages reflects when you first meet with a potential client. Now, I'm not talking about an initial call where they're sort of thinking about coaching. I'm referring to someone who you've actually had a discovery or a jump start or a prelim, whatever you call that, and they've actually sat down with you and they've explored coaching. what percentage of those people that you speak to actually convert to clients? We'll give you about 30 seconds to complete that. Jenny, what are we seeing as the numbers for that?
Sorry, Kelly is actually the one running the polls. I believe when he closes it, they'll pop up for all of us to see.
Okay.
There we go.
Okay, super. So we have, we've got a wonderful spread here. So 20% of you say 0 to 10% close. 7% of you are in that 10 to 30, 13% in the 31 to 50, 33% in the 50 to 70, 27% in the 71 to 90, and 0 at the 91 to 100%. So 50% of you, or actually 60% of you, are seeing a close rate of over 50%, and 50% of you, or 40% of you, are seeing a close rate of under 50%. So I think part of the work that we do tonight will really help support those of you who are seeing a close rate of under 50%. So I'm hoping that we will see a jump in those numbers. We have a second poll we would like to bring up now. So Kelly, if you would bring up that second poll, that would be terrific.
I'm having a problem with that poll. If you can give me a couple minutes.
Sure, absolutely. So it looks like I lost my PowerPoint presentation as well. Oh no, there it is. Okay, so let me scroll down here. I'm getting a little bit of a beach ball. Forgive me. Oh, I see that, Kristen. Thank you. So for some of you who are internal coaches, you know, you're not going to have that same issue with close rate, because basically a lot of times you get assigned a client, or the client is simply interviewing 2 or 3 internal coaches and selecting from that. Is that how it works for you, Kristen, as an internal coach? Feel free to post on there. Yeah, okay, super. So while Kelly's working on that second poll again, I think I'll move into the know, like, and trust piece. And then Kelly, whenever you're ready, just let me know. So we've heard that people need to know, like, and trust you in order to work with you. But what I have found is clients don't need to know that I'm an MCC. They really don't care. Clients don't need to know that I have 8,000 hours. I'm not sure clients really care that I ran a $30 million business. Now, later on in the process, depending on the kind of work that I'm doing, that might be helpful. But, you know, I wasn't always an MCC coach. I didn't always have 8,000 hours. And yet people were hiring me, and I had fairly high conversion rates. So what is it that they need to know? What they need to know is that you get them. And what happens is this creates a decrease in our performance anxiety, because we don't have to be so concerned about proving to them that we are a good coach and that we can help them. The way that we prove that to them is that we get to know them. Oh, super, Kelly. So let's go ahead and shout out to Kelly, who's our tech help and just drives making these things happen from a technical standpoint. He's going to post that up, and we'll come back to know, like, and trust and do a quick review. So this next field poll is about the components of contracting that, which one is this, Kelly? Is this the one that's most challenging? Oh, no, that's the first one. That's the conversion one. I kind of sprung this on them last minute, but I really wanted to know what you're dealing with in your, there we go. How many steps are there to your contracting process? So let me explain to you what I mean by this question. When you have your prelim with a person, do they have work that they have to do before the prelim? So that's one step in the contracting process. Once you have a person who says that they're interested, do you send them a contract, and then they have to sign the contract? So that would be 2 steps to the process. Do you have them sign a second contract, or other parts to a contract that, okay, this is about the coaching process, now this is about the contracting process, that would be 3 steps to your process. And then do you have like a second prelim, or do you do something else, and which I wouldn't know what that is, but I have worked with coaches that have 4 steps in their contracting process. So in general, how many steps do you believe there are to your contracting process? And take a moment to complete that as best as you can. Take a guess.
And Cheryl, can I ask one more clarifying question?
Perfect, Jenny.
If it's a packet of information, so it's like a couple of contracts and client info all at once, okay, that counts as 1 step. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. How are we doing on that poll?
Right now, we're about 18 out of 25 have voted so far.
Okay. I'll go ahead and put my vote in.
And there may be a few that it doesn't apply because they don't have the
Yeah.
process yet. So
Correct, yeah.
probably go ahead and close.
Yeah. Here's your results.
Super. So let's see what we have. All right, so 9% have a 1-step process, 68 have a 2-step process, and 23% of you have a 3-step process. Phenomenal. For those of you who have a 3-step process, what I'm going to recommend is you get your process down to 2 steps. And we'll talk a little bit more about that, but for that particular segment of our webinar tonight, that 23% will be most impacted by that piece. Thank you very much for that. Now, Kelly, is it possible we could do that last field poll as well? So this last field poll is more about the scariest part of the contracting process for you. Is it the stating, the negotiating of your rates? Is it dealing with those objections? Or is it clarifying the nature of the relationship and the coaching engagement? So and when I mean clarifying the nature of your relationship and the coaching engagement, what I'm referring to is when you're available and you're not available, how much time you're going to allow in between sessions, when would you be accessible by phone call, just all those parameters around what makes a strong contracted relationship and expectations. So go ahead, complete that one. We'll see what we have for that. And I will submit mine. None of the above. Okay, that's fine, Amanda. That's great. Maybe you should be doing this talk. Oh, I love it. Amanda, if it's none of those, what would be it for you? What part of contracting, and for Marve too, what part of contracting is scariest for you or most disconcerting? Maybe scariest is too much of a emotionally heightened word. Will they say yes? Can they afford it? Okay. So it's the how do you close that off? Good. Well, if none of those work for one of you, anyone else, please put your contractor part isn't scary. Okay, good, Marve.
About 70% have voted.
Okay, super. Give them another minute. Is it the right fit? So for Michael Marks, Michael brings up a really good point in his comments there. Is it the right fit is a great thing. So does your vetting process, as you're talking to the person, ensure that you two are going to be able to work really well together on behalf of the client and their best interests? Michael Marks was the first one that I'd actually heard him say this in a class one time, but he said, you know, everything that we do, we want to be doing for the sake of the best interest of the client. And that even includes the contracting process and the assignment of ourselves as a coach in the relationship. Yes, I hope so too, Marve. Okay, so stating rates, dealing with objections, and clarifying the nature of your relationship in the coaching agreement. 50%, 33%, 17%. I suspected that the rate piece was going to be the highest on this one. And I think all of these we will actually address tonight. So that's very helpful. And I hope you found that poll very interesting, even to see what is going on among your peers and where they're working through some things. So thank you for that, Kelly. Appreciate that very much. So now let's look at these next two segments on know, like, and trust. We've talked about how the fact that they need to get to, what they need to know is that you get them. The second thing is they need to know, they need to like you. And this kind of moves to Michael Marks's component on, is this the right fit? You know, we're not all the same. I know so many of you on this call, which is phenomenal. And you don't want to be me as a coach, and I don't want to be you as a coach. God has built and designed us very differently to work with very different types of people and temperaments and situations. And so I will test that relationship from the very beginning. I will be who I am in my prelim right from the start. And so they can assess, do they like someone who's a real straight shooter? Are they okay with some of these harder hitting questions from the very beginning? Because the reality is that's how I enjoy working the most, but that may not be what they enjoy receiving. They may not appreciate that on the receiving end. And so as part of our initial conversations, we will talk about my style and my approach to make sure that this is something that they're comfortable with, that they're okay with the coach being courageous and stepping into some of those spaces that they might be darting from or flirting with, and bringing them to the forefront for them to look at. And sometimes that's not going to work for them. Other times they're like, oh yeah, this is exactly what I'm looking for. So you can see we're starting to build that likability between us and that appreciation stylistically of what I would bring to them as a coach. And then the final piece is the main thing that must happen in order to create an environment of trust. And I alluded to this before, but I want to spend a little bit more time on this now, is client control and confidence, and coach confidence. In other words, the more opportunities you give the client to make decisions during that contracting process, the more in control the client is. And the less you worry about your performance and focus more on getting to know them and so on and so forth, you're going to build, your confidence is going to come through, and that's going to create a tremendous opportunity for a very rich relationship to start between you and your client from the very beginning. So 3 things, know, like, and trust. Take a look at, for just a moment, if you would, at your own process. And what is 1 or 2 things that you could tweak in your coaching conversation, in that initial jumpstart, prelim, discovery call that you have, whatever you call it. Please just don't call it an intake session, because an intake session is more associated with counseling. So if you're using that word intake and intake forms and so on and so forth, I'm going to recommend that you pull away from that language and use something that has more to do with forward motion and them being in charge versus you taking something from them as though you now own it and you're going to become responsible for it, because we don't want to create that kind of platform, that kind of mindset in the relationship. So for a moment, take about 30 seconds, kind of scan the horizon of your contracting process, and what can you slightly adjust to make sure that you're focusing on know, like, and trust in this kind of context, that they know you're getting to know them, that you get them, that they have an opportunity to decide whether or not they like you, and that you're creating an environment where the client is in control and you're working from a place of confidence rather than performance anxiety. Take a moment and let's see some of your answers, if you would like, in the chat room. And shout out to Kelly for those polls. Thank you, Kelly.
And Cheryl, just in case it's needed, can you repeat that one more time?
Yeah, so I'd love to have everybody participate in slight shifts. Your contracting process is never perfected. And so I want to pause with this know, like, and trust and give them a chance to figure out what's one slight shift that I can make in the way I'm doing my my prelims, my initial calls. Maybe it's what I'm calling it. Maybe it's the initial questions that I'm asking. Maybe it's how long the calls are. Maybe it's where my focus and attention is during the call. Just something that might move them more towards this know, like, and trust approach.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're
Yes,
welcome.
if you guys will just put that in the chat, things that are coming up for you, shifts that you know you can have already identified you can make. Ursula, thanks for getting us started. He shared approachability. Let the client know. Don't hesitate to ask any questions about the coaching relationship. Kelly says more direct, clear, and to the point.
Nice.
Michael adds in, important is to plan in enough time to really get to know them. He likes 60 to 90 minutes. Perhaps sending them a prep sheet in advance of the initial call would streamline this.
Mm-hmm.
Good, we've got some good stuff coming in.
Good. Yeah, keep reading those, Jenny.
Vicki says, take away the financial necessity of getting the person as a client from my mind. That's good.
Yeah, that's good mindset work.
Kristen, I need to demonstrate that I get them adequately. My confidence on my part.
Good.
Amanda, taking time to get more into my heart rather than in my head before I meet with a prospect.
Pre-prep yourself. Nice.
And Robin says, make sure my process is clear and simple.
Oh, this clearer and simpler you can make your process, the more the client's going to feel in control and know what they're saying yes to. The more convoluted and complicated it is, the less likely they are to say yes. Jenny, thank you for that. All right, so I'm going to go back to a couple of these that I've heard. I'm going to give you a little bit more content on that. First of all, talk about Michael Marks. He likes to give a little bit more time for their on the front end. And as your rates increase, you will find that you need to give your clients more time. And this approach that I use actually came from my assistant, whose husband has been in sales for a very, very long time. Now, I don't believe that we're in sales, and I'm not going to talk about sales tonight because that's not tonight's topic. But I will just say this, that we have been bought up out of the marketplace by Jesus Christ. And so that word sales does not work for me. I believe that we avail ourselves, we invite people, but we don't sell ourselves because we've been bought. But for this purpose, as your rates increase, typically you're going to need to spend a little bit more time with a potential client because you're asking for a fairly significant front-end investment from them. And so whereas my prelims used to be, 30 minutes, now I'm using I'm calling a date, engage, marry approach. And the date process is we still have a 30, 45-minute session. If I'm going to be potentially working with an executive, we might do a 75-minute session because we're going to be dealing with more complex issues. And then I typically do 1 month, a 1-month trial. I have 2 clients right now who are going into the 1-month trial. It's a lot easier to say yes to a month than it is to my standard, which is a 3-month commitment. So once you're a client, we work on a quarter-by-quarter basis, which keeps my calendar from going crazy. So we date with an initial call between 30 minutes and 75 minutes, depending on the nature of the work. For vendor coaching, it's a 30-minute call. I mean, most of my calls like that are 15 minutes. But for an executive who's thinking about bringing me in for a $1,000 a month retainer, we're typically in that $75-minute range for a conversation. And then we do a month together, and we make sure that this is really a strong fit. And then we start working on a quarter-by-quarter or on an annual corporate retainer basis for the year. So I wanted to talk a little bit more about that. I want to go back to Kelly's comment about clear, more direct, clear, and to the point. Oftentimes, potential clients are not going to know the questions that they need to ask. And so it is incumbent upon us to make it very clear. because they most likely have not done coaching before. So they're not going to think about, well, how accessible are you? Or what if I have a concern? Or what if I go over a little bit? Or what if I have to cancel? So these are things that we want to make sure we're very clear with them on the front end. And I'm going to share a couple of things, because I don't go through the whole contract on the front end. I'm going to talk about that briefly in a minute as well, related to Kelly's comment about direct, clear, and to the point. I make a point of highlighting 2 or 3 basic components of my contract. The first component is around payment. And what I explain to them is most coaches will ask for your money on the front end. And this is good and right. This is because you're contracting for services for this month. And this helps you to ensure that you stay committed to your own process. So I'm not asking you all to change your process. But some of you know that I've had some fairly significant health scares over the last 3 years. And I'm living on borrowed time, and I'm not being dramatic about that. That is just the fact. Now, I could live another 20 years, but the reality is the Lord has chosen to allow me to be very connected to my fragility. And so what I like to tell my clients is I would rather gift you a month than owe you a month. So you will be invoiced, or your credit card will be charged at the end of the month. So that's one contracting piece I'm very clear on with my clients. Again, I don't recommend that for you, but because of my situation, that's something I feel like I need to do. The second thing that I let them know is that I am a follower of Jesus. And that what that means is that I will bring the values of integrity, honesty, and truthfulness to the relationship. What it doesn't mean is I'm not going to proselytize or evangelize. And if they ever want to know about my faith and where my joy comes from, I'm happy to share that with them. But this is their time, it's their dime, and we're going to work on what they want to work on. But I'm happy to answer any questions on faith. And then the final piece that I will typically touch on is my accessibility and when they can reach me, especially because of the kind of work that I'm doing now. I mean, I have clients all over the world. Well, they're mostly in the States, but they travel all over the world. And we've got crazy time zones, and they have emergencies, and they're hiring or they're terminating. They want to do interview process. And so we have to be really clear on what my accessibility is for them and what that retainer is buying for them. So those are some of the things that I focus on. Confidentiality is touched on, but not as much now. I think at this point in my process, that's pretty much assumed. And they get all that when they get that contract piece of paper from me. There's a couple more. Yes, Kristen, I wanted to go back to the one that you said. I need to demonstrate that I get them adequately. And so I'm going to share with you a couple of tips that will help you to demonstrate to them that you get them adequately. The first is, don't start with explaining what coaching is about. They really don't care about what coaching is about yet. They want to know if this is a relationship that's going to lead them to want to coach with you. So let me say this again. They don't really care so much about coaching. You eat, live, and breathe coaching. You're in coaching classes. You have coaching friends. You have coaching peers. This is your world, but this is not their world. So our job is to get into their world before they can come into our world. Does that make sense? And so we're trying to do them this great service by making sure we've crossed all our T's and we've dotted all our I's and we're explaining everything clear, and they get buried underneath the weight of all these details, and they're not having a chance to find out if you get them. So flip your process around and start with them. Start with moving into their world and their context, and then slowly over the course of however much time you use on your coaching, on your prelim, and please feel free to take a full hour if you want. That's wonderful. Or like Michael Marks, up to 90 minutes, depending on the kind of person. And if 30 minutes is what you do, you can make it work with whatever time frame you have. I've worked with so many coaches, and I don't see any changes in conversion rates based on the amount of time they're spending with the client, except in relationship to the price. As the price goes up, you tend to need to spend a little bit more time on the front end. So flip the way you're thinking about this. Don't get hyper responsible about wanting to make sure you follow all those ethical guidelines. You'll get to those things. Michael Marks will be happy. Focus on getting in their world first. And then as you're managing the process, move them into that, what Robin Fuller was saying, that clear and simple process. think there were,
Cheryl, can I share the passcode real quick? So the first part of the passcode is simply the word the, THEV.
super. And Jenny, can you give me a check on my time? Because I have my screen full with the chat and with the panelists and with all of you, and I can't see.
Absolutely. We are just 2 minutes past the top of the hour.
Perfect. So if you would warn me when we're at 5:10, so we can open up for Q&A. I think we're doing a lot of practical here, but I want to get even more practical. Okay, so let's go to this next piece. Simple fixes to create higher conversion rates. The first is, for those of you who have 3 steps, drop it. You've got to drop it by 30%. You're going to lose them. There's one coach that I was working with. He had a 2 sign-up process. He cut the second sign-up process, and basically when he was working with someone in person, he had a contract with them, and he gave them the opportunity to sign there if he wanted. He does mostly in-person work. His conversion rate skyrocketed. He was, I can't remember the exact numbers, so I might be misquoting, but he was at, I think, about 10 or 15%. He jumped up to 60%. So that's one thing. Simplify your process. Basically, this is how I describe it to my clients. Say, okay, you know, based on where we're at, we're not focusing on closing and dealing with objections right now, but I'll just give you one little role play on that. So based on a conversation that we've had today, you know, where do you think you're going to go next, client, a potential client, whoever it is? Well, I think I'm ready. What do we need to do? And so this is your cue. Well, it's very simple. I'll send you an agreement to sign. It's all done electronically, so it should be very easy for you. Kimberly will reach out to you to set up your appointments. Simple as 1 and 2. Oh, great, let's do it. And then they may have some questions around, well, how often and how long is the sessions? And so then I'll go into some more of the details if we need to clarify. Typically, we're meeting for X amount of time during the month. It doesn't matter, we can meet once a month, twice a month, 3 times a month, whatever's gonna work for your schedule. Again, that's because of the kind of work that I do. And okay, great, so I can just figure that out. Yep, and you can change it from month to month, whatever you need it to be. Oh, this is great, super, so we're done with that. So simplify your contracting process. Make it very clear and easy for them to know what they're saying yes or they're saying no to. Second, and this goes back to one of the scary pieces to contracting, knowing their budget. So there's 2 parts to the financial contracting piece. There's what you're comfortable charging, and there's what they're comfortable paying. And so do you have a range? Like, do you have what your rate is? And if this is someone you're like, oh, I really want to work with this person. I've done all this marketing in Kim Avery's Marketing Momentum, you know, class to get to this client. And now they're in front of me, and we are $150, you know, gap between where they are and where I am. What do? You negotiate. And you can simply say, you know, and I'm going to pick on somebody I know. I'll pick on Robin. You know, Robin, you are in the sweet spot of the type of person I want to work on. Huh. And so for me, yes, I need to earn a living with this, but I'm willing to negotiate something that could work for both of us and put this in a 3-month trial to see how things are going. And if you're seeing progress, and at that point, we can relook at the rates. Do we stay where we are, or can we get us bumped up to my normal rate? Would you be comfortable looking at a relationship like that? And I've had that happen with several clients. Some of them we stay the same. Some of them, it's too much money. They're not getting the value out of it for what they're wanting to do. I've referred them to other people who are a little cheaper, or we've bumped up to my normal retainer rate. So I want you to see that there is some flexibility, but again, you want to be very clear and make this simple for them, and as much as possible, create an opportunity where you're working together, but they're deciding. And then the third piece, which I've already talked about, is make it easy to begin. It's as simple as 2 steps. Number 1, fill out the form. Number 2, Kimberly will fill out, you know, we'll get you on the schedule, and she'll find days that will work for you. Okay, so, oh, thank you, Jenny. Yeah, that's, I really am trying to, you know, get these people to more people. So that helps you with simple fixes to create client your contracting. I'm hoping I try to make this so practical for you today, and I hope that you are walking away with some very practical ideas that you can go begin to implement. And remember, 2 rules of thumb. Contracting is an art, and I am constantly learning new things. So please be gentle with yourself, but also be firm with yourself. Be gentle that you're going to make mistakes, and be firm with yourself that you're going to make the necessary changes to continue to improve your process on behalf of both you and the client. Because you might wind up getting stuck with a client and you're like, why did I do this? I should have charged twice as much money for this. Well, remember that. Remember that you need to up your rates a little bit. And so the next time somebody says no, or they want to drop the rate, you'd be like, you know, I'd love to help you, but there's a high value to this and I'm not able to do that. So maybe we can work on something else. Maybe there's another coach you can work with, or maybe this will work out for you. All right. I want to bring the coach perspective and the client perspective to the contracting process. If these ingredients, it's sort of I have a bone broth sitting on the stove right now. We've just used up all the bone broth that I'd made over the last 6 months, and it's a beautiful fall day. And so last night I bought some frozen organic beef bones from Whole Foods, and I got them roasted, and they're on the stovetop right now. And it just makes it feel so much like fall. And so I know, because of the ingredients that I've put in that bone broth, that we're going to have some delicious soups and stews coming up over the next couple of months. So I'm hoping that with these words that I'm about to share with you, that you can start to create some delightful relationships with strong contracting going on between the two of you. So the first is this. And one of you, I can't remember who it was, about pre-prepping yourself before you go into the call. Yeah, that was Amanda Kelleher. Taking time to get more into my heart rather than into my head before I meet with the prospect. Such a beautiful reposturing of yourself. If you go into the conversation relaxed, guess what happens? Your client will be creative. And if the client is creative, what's now happened to your value proposition? It's just shot up, because the client is realizing this is an environment that's bringing out something very powerful in them. But if you come to that call uptight, trying to cross all your T's and dot all your I's, make sure you do this, blah, 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 and wiggle your nose and put your head on the other way, and forget it. I'm going to walk away from this. I don't need this because I can't even think straight, right? So we want to create an environment where they can think straight and think creatively. And the next ingredient is humility. If you come to the call humble and stop worrying about that performance anxiety and allow the client to make more and more decisions during that process, you are going to create an environment that builds a confident client. And a confident client is a repeating client. A confident client is a converted client. But it starts with us being humble. As soon as our ego gets in the way, there's I can't remember who said this, I wish I could give credit. I think it might have been John Townsend or Henry Cloud, one of those. But they use that word ego, and the idea of ego, thank you, Jenny. Ego is either we're edging God out or we're exalting God only. And go into your call exalting God only. Don't worry if they're going to become a client or not. That's immediately going to flip that switch to performance anxiety. Next is, the more invisible we can be in that process, the more fully present the client can be to their work. And I know you've all been in classes on this and so on and so forth, but what I want to challenge you with this particular point is that needs to start in the jumpstart call. Yes, after you have a chance to get to know their context, you really need to move into talking about how this all works logistically and the parameters and the framework and all of that. Absolutely. But as much as possible, we want to keep the spotlight on the client. And that creates a more fully present client. They're not checking out, and the more they check out, the less likely they are to engage with you. The next is, don't forget, you are sitting in front of someone that God created, who is given gifts and callings that are irrevocable, who knitted them in their mother's womb. And if we can stay in this place of awe and curiosity, oh my goodness, my friends, this is when your clients start to experience the real ahas in their life. Of course, we can't go into this too much. I do want to leave room for questions. The next is please stay non-tactical. You've heard all of us as leaders in this industry talk about this many times, but even on this front end, this is important. If you coach the problem, if you're searching for the solution versus focused on the person, you're going to start to diminish the value of that contracting process. At the same time, however, you have to manage the process well. They need to know what the steps are. So there is a tactical component to this, but we don't want to be tactical in our approach. Does that make sense? There's a tactical, I like how I said that. I think that's worth repeating. There's a tactical component to this, but we don't want to use a tactical approach. And, you know, slicing and dicing that a little bit might be helpful to explore a little further. And then finally, and we've talked about this a lot, be clear in your expectations, and then it's so much easier for them to decide. All right, so before we get to next steps, I really wanted to create opportunity for us to have a conversation to talk about your questions. So I'm just going to give you a moment to put down any questions that you have regarding contracting processes, whether it's corporate or individual, whether it's life coaching or business coaching, whether they're large contracts or small contracts, or if there's mistakes that you made, you want to know how you can adjust your mistakes, or if there's something about the contracting process that you're just not clear on and you're seeing a pattern maybe in how your contracting is going and you don't like it, go ahead and post in the chat room. And let's see what we can cover in the next 15 minutes or so. Okay, we'll talk about that. Okay, Kelly, we'll talk about that. Give you a few more minutes or a few more seconds here to gather your thoughts. It can be hard to put things in. Oh, good question on the HR. All right, so the questions might continue to come. I'm going to begin answering some of these as best as I can. The first one is, curious what other names you use for intake forms. I love that question, and actually I would love for us to blast the chat room to describe the words you use for your process, your prelim, jumpstart, discovery process. If you didn't use intake forms and intake process, what do you use? Bonnie uses discovery. Let's hear from a bunch of you. Come on, let's drop something in that chat box there. Exploratory call, that's good. Discovery call, exploratory call. Discovery, we've got 3 discovery now. Which really future, I use enrollment, enrolling the client in their vision and future. Nice, I like that. It's an enrollment process for themselves. Very, very creative. Who else? Okay, I think that's all we're going to get on that, probably because other people have the same kind of words on that. So I hope that helps with that question. Next question is, I'd like to hear more how you work your retainers for organizations. So typically when I'm working with an organization, there's 2 types of contracts. The first contract is the contract with the organization itself. And typically there is a budget associated with that. Not always. I'm just signing on with a new organization, which there is no budget. So, but we'll see what happens with this. it's brand new. I have no idea how I'm going to do this. So I want you to hear this. I'm in a brand new situation and I have no idea what I'm doing. This is classic how it works. But the clean way to do it is you have an understanding of the budget that is available for coaching overall. You have an understanding of how the organization wants to use the coaching. And then you have the selection of the people who would then be participating in the coaching relationship. So there's the corporate retainer, the corporate contract, which is typically a 2-page document that I would send to them that explains the relationship, the nature of the supervisor, the nature of the sponsor, how I'm going to get paid, the budget that we have, and then typically how many people I will be working with and how frequently I will be working with them, and then what the communication will be between the people and myself and the sponsor or the supervising agent. And so that might include, we're working with 6 people and I'm doing an on-site once a month and we're all, everybody's meeting on the same day, or I have some people I'm meeting with every month, some people I'm meeting every other month, some people I'm meeting with teams. So you map kind of that out, and there can be modifications, but I really typically base that on a total number of hours that I'll be working with the team or the organization, and the dollars that they have to assign to that. And then for each individual person that I'm working with, they basically have a 1-page little contract that they sign. They get a copy of the corporate agreement, and then they have a little 1-page, this is what we're doing, this is what we'll be working on, this is who your supervisor or your sponsor agent is, and then this is how long we'll be working together. So there's the corporate contract, which everybody reads. It has the confidentiality stuff in it. And then there's the individual addendum to the corporate agreement for each person. Now, I've gotten a little sloppy with this. So even as I'm sitting here talking with you, I'm realizing with this new company that I'm working with, I probably need to get a little bit more specific on that. So I might have to clean that up a little bit. The other way that I've done this, and this has worked really well as well, is the corporate organization wants me to work with their people, but they just want me to work with them individually. So really, although it's a corporate relationship, it's with the individuals, and then I'm setting up that retainer relationship with each individual person. And I don't put them on a year-long retainer. It's a quarter-by-quarter retainer, because I'm not contracting with the corporation. I'm working with the individual, who is then sending their invoice for our services to the company, and the company reimburses them. So I'm actually getting paid by the individual. So I hope that helps. Those are the 2 basic ways. But I want to jump in with the question that Michael had, because this pertains to that other question that Kelly had asked. What is the best way to involve HR when coaching sponsored clients? This is a big question, because the way I have set up, I work with a lot of small businesses. I don't do a lot of that Fortune 100 corporate work, but I have some friends who do. And what they have found is my approach of using prep and summary forms and having those summary forms go to the supervising agent was not going well. And the reason is because as soon as you start filling out more paperwork, it starts to feel like an HR environment. And oftentimes in these larger organizations, there's a little bit of a disdain for the HR world, and it creates a little bit of suspicion. Well, what happens is when suspicion goes up, the trust goes down, and then you break down the value of the coaching relationship. So that needs to be felt out a little bit. I just started working with a new company, and I'm working with the CEO and the VP of HR, and we're starting to talk about, I'm just doing some training for them, for the whole team, but we're starting to talk about what this relationship might look like in the future. And that's actually one of my questions for them, Michael, is what is the relationship to HR, and what would be a structure that would create the optimum experience for the clients? Because of course the client is the person who's in front of you. The client is not the HR director or the CEO. So opportunities to kind of feel that out on the front end and see what you think is going to work the best. Okay, so let me see. How are we doing on time, Jenny?
We're at 5:22, so we're doing good.
Okay, super. I see one here. I've just started a nonprofit, and I'm recruiting volunteers to help me realize a big dream. Congratulations, Sherry, by the way. Good for you. How can I use contracting to get them settled into serving with me? Okay, so what you're talking about is more the purpose and the intent of a contract. So there's several, and of course I'm not a lawyer, there's no legal advice here. But understand that contracts are for the purpose of clarifying the relationship so that both parties can feel confident about the relationship and their expectations of what will be delivered. So that is the heart of contracting. It's a way to protect from unnecessary disappointment, which I literally just went through. Remember I shared that story? Rearranging a trip because there was lack of clarity. Now in this case, I was the recipient of the contract. I was not setting up the contract. This was a person who I was going to do work with. And because they had said one thing here, and then they said one thing here, and then I got another thing in an email, I went, whoa, we have no clarity. Stop the presses. This is not going to happen. Trust went way down, and I'm not sure that I can work with this person now. So the lesson in this for you and for me is do the work on the front end. Ask the hard questions on the front end. This team training that I'm about to do, he typically brings in a team trainer for $3,000. And I said, I can't fly to your company across the country for $3,000 and do your training for you. He said, well, that's what I budgeted for, but I want to work with you. I said, okay, well, my normal fee for that would be 10 grand. And he says, I can't afford that. I said, okay, well, let's see if we can get this monkey in the middle somewhere. And we both get our hands on it. So we continued to negotiate over about a 45-minute period. And he was saying things like, this could lead to more business for you. And I said, I understand that, but that's not a known thing. And the time that I'm spending with you is a time I'm not on the phone with my retainer clients because my focus is going to be on you. So I've got to make sure that I'm honoring those relationships as well. And this is happening over the holidays. So it's pulling away time from my family. So eventually we settled on, I think it was $7,000, and I was going to pay my own airfare. And I'm like, well, I'm going to get miles. It's a cross-country flight. I'm willing to do that. So he doubled what he was paying me. I reduced what I was getting paid, but we reduced the amount of time that I was going to be with his team. So I was going to have a little bit of free space instead of this full day thing. It was going to be a half day. So a lot of details there, but you're seeing we worked through all this on the front end in a very amicable way. In addition to that, I told him, I said, I want to make sure you have a very favorable experience because I would be interested in working with your team long term. They're a fast growing company. They're a Christian company. They've got beautiful things going on, and I would like to be a part of that. And I told him that. I said, so I'm willing to give you a couple of meetings on the front end, one with you and your HR person, and then one with your senior level management team to prepare us for the work that we're going to do when we're together. He said, that's phenomenal. Well, I got together with him and his HR person. That went beautiful. Then we were supposed to have a meeting with everyone, and the meeting got canceled. So now we have to reschedule it. He's like, I'm so sorry that I have to do this. I'm only going to have half the people there. I know we were only going to have one meeting. Are you okay if? And I was able to say to him, I'm willing to reschedule this one more time. Now, how come we could do that? Because we had that clear contracting upfront, Sherry. So the clearer you can get from them in terms of your expectations, how you define success, and the clearer they can be with you in terms of what they feel like they need for success and what their expectations are as they work with you, the stronger your relationship will be with them up front. And again, very simple and direct with that. Okay, 3 questions left. What information should be gathered or shared before a contract is shared? This is what information should be gathered or shared before a contract is shared. I don't have the clients do anything prior to a prelim. I don't really scope them out on the front end. I don't have them fill out a form like Michael does because what I found is oftentimes they don't take the time And what they realize is, oh my goodness, if I'm not taking the time to do this on the front end, then am I really going to have time for the coaching relationship? And we basically have set up an objection that I wasn't even trying to set up, which creates a resistance point. So basically, I just have them show up to the call. So I'm not trying to collect a lot of information on the front end. A person who is a referral, most of my business is referral. I do not go out and solicit business at all. It's all referral. So it's coming from a fairly trustworthy source. We meet and then we work from there. So there's not a lot of, but during that prelim, we will go over, confidentiality, the framework for coaching, the choices that they can make in terms of frequency of meeting, how we use that time, what I'm expecting from them as a client to come, to work on, and what I help them with. And I let them know the first 2 or 3 sessions will really just focus on that high level agenda. What do they want to get out of the whole relationship to make it really worth their while? And we're going to get very specific, because what I found is the more specific the client can be about what they want to accomplish, the more satisfied they are with their results. And I tell them that up front. So hopefully that helps you, Jenny. Please use another word for non-tactical to help me understand that more. I think sometimes what happens, Kristen, is we get so caught up in wanting to make sure we cross all the T's and dot all the I's that we overwhelm the client with the coaching framework itself, when there's a lot of that stuff that they can read in the contract. So asking them some questions, making sure you highlight the things that you feel like are most important to the relationship, and leave the rest to them doing their reading and following up with you by email with any questions they have. That's what I'm referring to. All right. I think we're getting near the bottom of the hour. How are we doing on time?
Yep, we've got 1 more minute, about 1.5 minutes.
Okay. I'm going to close this off. Thank you so much for all of your questions. I hope that you have found this to be very practical and helpful to you. And while I'm sharing with you some next steps that you might want to take, feel free to chat in there. Your key takeaway and your next step. I really want to activate you to make even one slight change to your contracting process. So here's 3 ways I would love for you to reach out to me. First is email me at Cheryl Way of Life Coaching and let me know what you found helpful in today, because I am, I'm providing this information to you, and this is going to help me to know if we do another eSummit and I'm asked to come back and speak, what do I need to be sharing? What would make this better for you, or the next layer of content? So help me to know that for the future, because then I'll know what topics to bring. The second is, some of you are already aware, I have a free coaching skill booster call that I do several times a year. And so if you would like to sign up and jump on that, you don't get any hours. It's not CCNI, all fancy with certifications and all that. It's just a place to go to get some more information you want and get a few questions answered. And we've got one coming up October and November. You can go to mentorcoachinsights.com and learn about that. And then finally, and this is something that I'm most excited about, is we are going to be offering the practicum that I do 4 times next year, because there's a lot of interest in this. And basically what that means is 4 times a year. The January one is almost full, but I will be offering to you the opportunity to do skills refinement in this practicum environment. And in addition to that, you have access to over 40 hours of pre-recorded and observed coaching sessions at your fingertips. So again, that's available, I think, on mentorcoachinsights.com. You can find out more about the practicum. And if you can't find it, I don't even know where it is, just email me and I'll get you in touch with the person who takes care of that. So thank you so much, everyone, for being with me, and I really enjoyed this. I hope it was helpful to you, and I'm going to turn it over to Jenny now.